Guess what? My yarn advent project is finished, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Welcome to Candy Shoppe Yarns, where everything is sugar-free and high in fiber. I am Deborah, the owner of Candy Shoppe Yarns, and it is a new year, and I have a new finished project I want to tell you about. So, I am a yarn dyer, and this is my 2024, December 2024, was my second year offering a yarn advent calendar. And the theme for this one was Curiouser and Curiouser. Alice in Wonderland. If you know me, that is an obvious that I love Alice in Wonderland. It includes 24 20-gram mini skeins and one 100-gram full skein on the last day, on the 25th. So I had this graphic that I used as the inspiration for the colors. And this is what I have left after making my project that I want to share with you. So let's open up the box, which has some of the supplies I used, and I will tell you all the details. So I knit the Calliope Sweater. This is the second time I have knit it. Here is the first one that I made. Now let me tell you about the Calliope Sweater. This is a pattern by Espace Tricot. The designer is Melissa Clulow, C-L-U-L-O-W. And the first time I knit this, I used fingering weight yarn held with a strand of lace weight mohair. And you can see it's kind of got this drapiness to it. It is not very thick, but it is definitely warm. The gauge is not really tight, nor is it really loose. And it has this ribbed yoke that gives it kind of the shaping. There is some short row shaping. The first time I did it, I kind of messed the short rows up, but I think it looks fine still. But the short rows raise the back of the neck higher than the front so that it doesn't come up so high in the front and feel like it's choking me. And then it has raglan sleeve increases, and then the sleeves decrease slightly, and then you just knit long ribbing, and it kind of gives it a wide open sleeve. On this one, I did go down a needle size for the ribbing so that it didn't flare as much. And then on the bottom, it's not a really long length. I did add 1.5 inches in length so that it wasn't as cropped, but it still has a good length of ribbing. And that is my first Calliope sweater. And I think it is a really great sweater for knitters that really want to knit their first sweater. It isn't really complicated. It just has knits, purls, increases, and short rows. And all of those things are pretty simple to learn. So I think that was a great pattern. So I decided I wanted to do the same thing, but this time I was going to divide up, instead of doing all one colorway, I was going to divide it up to use my advent calendar, all the mini skeins. So let's have a look at the sweater. So I used the needles that it called for in the pattern. I did not do a gauge swatch. I had knit this before and I knew that the needle size that the pattern called for worked for my gauge, but I was going to change the yarn up a little bit, which could change the gauge. What I did is, instead of holding a fingering weight yarn held with a lace weight mohair, I held a fingering weight yarn with a lace weight Surrey alpaca. And Surrey alpaca is a little bit thicker, a little bit fluffier. And so it ended up giving me a slightly different gauge. And because of that, I liked the gauge I was getting, but the size I was knitting a size 3, I realized was going to be too big for what I wanted. So once I got to about here, I could measure my gauge and see that I needed to do the next size smaller. So I had all the same stitch counts here, and then I just made sure to change the increases for the raglan increases to the size 2. And then I had to figure out how many rows am I going to knit of each color before I switch. So I took the yardage requirement and divided that by 24 because I had 24 colors I wanted to use. And I knew that I wanted the body to also match the sleeves. So I wanted the colors to come across and match the sleeves. So I had to figure out, the body was about, this is very, very rough. I didn't do the stitch count for the sleeves combined and compared to the body. I just made an average guess that I figured I needed about 60% of that yardage for the body and 40% for the sleeves total. So I divided that up and figured out how many grams I needed of each yarn. So I kept my little mini weight, my scale, next to me so I could weigh my yarn as I went to make sure that I used enough of the yarn that I could get through the whole body of the sweater. But that would not work for the top. If I did that, so what I needed was to use about 12, let me see my notes, what I did. I used about 12.5 grams, about, is that right? No, I used 8 grams of yarn for the body. That's what it was. But if I did a full 8 grams here, where it has smaller circumference, that would be a lot longer, and the percentage, it would look funny. I wanted the stripes to look more even. So I just did less of this one, the first 3 colors. And then I went up for the remaining ones. The other thing that I did is I really wanted this to blend and fade really well. So I alternated colors. I would introduce the new color, and for 6 rows I would alternate the colors. One row would be one color, and then the next row would be the new color, and then the next row would be the old color, next row would be the new color. I did that for 6 rows, and then I did 2 plain rows of one color and started again. Well, that was all going very well, and then I was getting to the bottom of the sweater and I realized, well, I'm gonna add about 1.5 inches. I decided to add about 1.5 inches of length because I didn't want it quite as cropped, but I was running out of sweater before I was running out of colors. So I skipped day 19 because I felt like I had plenty of purple. So I skipped, because this is Don't Step on the Mome Rats. I skipped day 19 and went to 20, and I never made it. Let's see. Oh, I skipped day 22 and did day 23, but I never even made it to 24. So there are 3 skeins I didn't use at all because I just ran out of sweater before I ran out of colors. So I'm kind of sad I didn't ever get the red and the dark pinks in. I ended with this pink and some speckles of of some reds in there as well. So these are the colors I ended up using. And this is what I have left. So you can see the first 3 colors, I have more yarn left than I have of the rest. So here's the first color, and then here's another one where I just don't have quite as much of it left over. Let's get these back in place. I'm trying to keep the order so I can do another project with this. And then I decided to change the sleeve as well. So I knit the body, and then it was time to do the sleeves. And I wanted to make sure that the sleeves were completely the same and even. So I went and bought 2 12-inch needles. 12-inch circular needles so that I could knit them at the same time and not have magic loop having more things hanging off, because I was going to have a strand of fingering weight yarn held with a strand of the Surrey alpaca, but I'm also alternating skeins, so that means I will have another strand. I'm sitting down with my Advent project. I have finished the body, and now I'm working on the sleeves. You can see I've got my little balls of yarn down there. They're all in a row, ready for me to use them in order. Well, when doing the sleeves, I need to do them simultaneously so they match. But I need to be blending 2 colors. So I have done 2 colors here, and once I blend it out, 1 color, I come over here and I start the next one. And then once I've blended out the next one and I finished it, I come over here and start it here. And I'm trying to keep it straight, as well as the decrease rounds and knowing how many rounds I have done. And like, I feel like this I made way too complicated. So I'm doing a decrease round with 1 color, and then I am going to start fading in the new color here, because I just finished fading this one out over here. I don't know if that sounds confusing to you, but I'm having a hard time with it because I have too many things attached, and I feel like I don't dare put this down, because then I'll have to figure out what I'm doing each time I pick it up again. Hi, Luna. So I did the decreases, and then I just knit straight. And I didn't do the ribbing like it said. I just knit it straight for, let's see how many inches, for 13.5 inches. And then I decreased down to 32 stitches and went down a needle size and knit ribbing for 2.5 inches. And that's how I made my sweater. Now I figured out how many stitches I wanted for the cuff by going down to the ribbing. I took the ribbing, I held it around my wrist, how tight I wanted it to be, and I counted those stitches. And I needed it to be divisible by 4 because I was doing a knit 2 purl 2 pattern. And I was going to do 30 stitches, but that wasn't divisible by 4. So I went up 2 stitches, and I'm glad I did, because it's actually like the perfect snugness. I really like how snug it is. So then I needed to block this, and I soaked it with wool wash for about 40 minutes. And I used my spin dryer to get as much of the moisture out as possible. I normally would roll it up in towels, but that still leaves a good amount of yarn or water, and I wanted this to dry quickly. So I used my spin dryer, and then I placed it out on blocking mats. And these blocking mats I purchased years ago from Lowe's, a home, it's like a home repair and building supply kind of place. I'm trying to think of the right term. That's not the right term. Anyways, it was in the flooring section, and I think I bought those for maybe $24, and they're two panels. Each panel is 2 feet wide, so it's 4 feet by 4 feet. I have some other ones that I've bought that are crafting ones, and there's 9 panels, but it only goes 3 feet by 3 feet, and I need bigger for a full wingspan. So I like those blocking mats, but they are larger to store. And I pinned it out and let it dry overnight. And then everything was nice and relaxed, and I could get a more boxy fit and not have the bottom ribbing sucking in as much. So here you can see video of me wearing the sweater before blocking and after blocking. And in video, it's not as big of a difference as you might think, but how it feels on is very different. It doesn't feel too tight or restrictive. It's just nice and comfortable, which is exactly what I wanted. But I had to weave in all those ends. So I spent a good amount of time finishing weaving in ends. I tried to weave in as many as I could as I went. So I'd knit over my ends as I went and as I worked in a color and worked one out. But when it was time for ribbing or under the arms or the beginning and the very end, I had to weave all of those in by hand. So I just spent some time this morning finishing that up, and now I love how it looks. So let's see, do you think that these colors are a good representation of what I ended up here? Let's have a look. We've got the blues up here, and if you see, there's a lot of this kind of minty green around, which we've got here, this teal color. Let's see, we start with the blues, the darker blues, and then we go into teals and the minty greens, and then we have this kind of, I was thinking it was like a sunrise golden color, and then into this kind of corally, and there's some corally in here, and then we've got a whole bunch of different purples, and I really loved this one. I worked really hard to get a colorway that I thought was a good representation of that. And then I ended with a light pink and a little bit of red. I'm very happy with it. So I don't plan to make another sweater with another advent. I think I might do a cardigan next. I've done a lot of different shawls, scarves, wraps, that kind of thing, but I think that a cardigan is needed next time. So if you had an art yarn advent, I'd love to know, what did you make with yours? And if you haven't used yours, what do you plan to make with it? Leave that in the comments. I would love to hear, and I hope that you enjoy your making.